Welcome back to Lina's Romantasy collection, where the alphas think they're in charge, but the heroines always keep the receipts. Quick question for the pack before we start today's audit. What is the weirdest thing you've ever found in a boss's desk? Let me know in the comments, and drop a if your own Spike is currently curled up next to you judging your life choices. Today's story is a personal favorite. It's funny, it's sharp, and it involves a very tired accountant, a hidden ledger, and an alpha king forced to wear a yellow picnic blanket in a supermarket parking lot. But before the first shift starts, if you want to support the collection and get early access to exclusive stories and badges, hit that join button down below. It helps me keep the lights on and the alphas in line. Now take a deep breath. The books are open, the alpha is stressed, and the audit is officially starting. Let's read. Chapter 1. Katrina Miller just wanted to go to sleep. She sat at the absurdly expensive mahogany desk in the corner office, staring at her laptop screen. The glow reflected off her bright pink digital watch. It was past 8 on a Friday night. She adjusted her soft, oversized gray sweater. It kept slipping off her left shoulder, and she was too tired to care. She reached into her heavy canvas tote bag resting on the floor and pulled out her charger. As she ducked under the desk to plug it in, her hand brushed against a hidden drawer. It popped open. Inside sat a thick, leather-bound ledger. Kat blinked. As a freelance accountant, finding hidden books was usually a bad sign. She pulled the ledger out and flipped it open. The expenses were completely bizarre. There were receipts for 50 pounds of raw venison for a monthly retreat. There were invoices for repairing shredded clothing, and there was a very large line item labeled bribe money for the local sheriff, Wolf Matters. Before Kat could process what she was looking at, the heavy oak door swung open. Brooks Griffin, her boss, walked in. He looked exactly like a CEO who owned a highly profitable lumber company. He wore a tailored navy blue suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His dark hair was messy, sticking up in places where he had run his fingers through it. Brooks froze. He stared at the open ledger in Kat's hands. Kat slowly closed the book. She pushed it across the desk. "I am just going to pretend I did not see the part about the raw meat," she said clearly. Brooks closed his eyes. He took a deep, shaky breath. Then he locked the office door. "You were not supposed to see that," Brooks said. His voice was low and intense. He began pacing back and forth across the thick rug. "This changes everything. My pack is hidden in this valley for 6 generations. We have rules, ancient, unbreakable rules. And now, a human has breached our inner circle." Kat stared at him. She checked her pink watch. It was now 8:15. She really needed to get home. Spike was probably eating the sofa cushions out of hunger. "I am just an accountant," Kat pointed out. "I just audit the lumber sales." Brooks waved a hand, dismissing her logic. He tapped his silver signet ring against the wooden bookshelf. The ring had a weird wolf crest on it. "You do not understand the danger," he lectured, his voice rising in dramatic volume. "There are rival packs. There are hunters in the woods. By reading that ledger, you have placed a target on your own back. I am legally and morally responsible for your safety under the old laws." Why is she looking at the glass? Brooks thought, feeling a spike of annoyance. "I am delivering the most critical safety briefing of the decade." Kat was indeed looking at the glass. The corner office was on the first floor. Right behind Brooks was a large window. Below it was a bed of soft, decorative bushes. She did some quick mental math. If she slid the window open, she could drop into the bushes, run to her faded plum-purple hatchback in the parking lot, and be home in 10 minutes. Brooks turned his back to her, pointing sharply at a map of the forest on the far wall. "We have enemies who would use you to get to me," he declared loudly. Kat stood up. She quietly grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag and slung it over her shoulder. She made sure the plastic baggie of beef liver treats was secure in her left jacket pocket. She tiptoed toward the window. "The bloodlines must be protected," Brooks continued, staring at the map. "You must swear an oath of silence. We will need to relocate you to the estate immediately." Kat reached the window. She flipped the metal latch. It gave a tiny click. She slowly pushed the bottom pane of glass up. The cool night air rushed in. She lifted her right leg, the one with the cobalt blue paint splatters on the knee, and threw it over the sill. She was halfway out. Freedom was so close. Suddenly, a large hand slammed flat against the glass right above her head. The window snapped shut with a loud bang, pinning her sweater to the frame. Kat froze. Brooks was standing right behind her. He was so close, she could smell the crisp scent of fresh black tea and cedar coming from his suit. His chest rumbled with a deep, vibrating sound that sounded exactly like a growl. He leaned down. His face was inches from hers. "I wasn't finished," he whispered. Chapter 2. Kat stared at the large hand pressing against the glass. The silver signet ring with the wolf crest caught the dim office light. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a sudden drop on a roller coaster. She slowly turned her head to look at Brooks. He looked very annoyed. His sharp jawline was tight. He kept his hand firmly on the window, trapping her between the glass and his broad chest. "Did you honestly think you could climb out of a window while I was speaking?" Brooks asked. Kat pulled her leg down from the windowsill. She tugged her gray sweater free from where it was pinched in the frame. "Yes," she answered honestly. "You were talking for a really long time. I have places to be." Brooks narrowed his dark eyes. He stood up straight, towering over her. "I am trying to explain that your life is in danger. You know about the werewolves now. You know about the pack." "I know you buy too much raw meat and bribe the sheriff," Kat corrected him. She smoothed down her paint-splattered jeans. "I don't care what you do on your weekends. You can run around in the woods all you want, but my shift ended 20 minutes ago. I need to leave." Brooks let out a frustrated sigh. He ran a hand through his already messy dark hair. He squared his shoulder, puffed out his chest, and looked down at her with a terrifying glare. "You will remain in this building," Brooks commanded. His voice boomed through the room. It was thick, heavy, and vibrating with power. It was his alpha command voice. Any normal werewolf would have instantly dropped to their knees in submission. Kat just blinked. To her human ears, he just sounded like a guy shouting in a closed room. "Do you need a throat lozenge?" Kat asked, stepping around him. "Your voice just cracked. Anyway, I'm leaving." Brooks stared at her in total shock. His alpha command had completely failed. "I wonder if this guy realizes my dog has better listening skills than his entire security team," Kat thought as she walked back to the desk. "You cannot leave," Brooks argued, quickly following her. He stood between her and the heavy oak door. "It is not safe. The rival pack from the Northern Ridge has scouts in town. If they smell my scent on you, they will use you as leverage." "I don't smell like you," Kat said, picking up her pink digital watch from the desk and strapping it to her wrist. "Yes, you do," Brooks insisted. "You have been in my office all day, and I am standing right next to you." Kat ignored him. She hoisted her heavy canvas tote bag higher onto her shoulder. "Listen, Mr. Griffin, I have a dog. His name is Spike. He is currently locked in my apartment, and if I do not feed him his dinner by 8:30, he will eat my shoes. I cannot stay here." "I will have one of my guards fetch the animal," Brooks offered, tapping his ring against the doorframe. "Certainly not," Kat snapped. "Nobody breaks into my apartment to steal my dog. Move out of the way." Brooks crossed his arms over his tailored navy blue suit. "No, I am protecting you." Kat reached into her heavy canvas tote bag. She pushed her laptop aside and grabbed her phone. She held it up, showing him the screen. Her thumb hovered right over the emergency dial button. "If you do not unlock that door right now, I am calling the human police," Kat threatened. "I will tell them my boss is holding me hostage because he thinks he is a wild animal." Brooks let out a low, dangerous growl. He moved faster than Kat could blink. He snatched the phone right out of her hand. "Hey!" Kat yelled, reaching for it. Brooks held it high above his head, totally out of her reach. "Fine," he said tightly. "If you insist on fetching the dog yourself, I will drive you. But you are coming back to my estate immediately after, understood?" Chapter 3. Kat marched angrily through the underground parking garage. Her faded plum-purple hatchback was parked on the upper level, but Brooks had practically dragged her down here. She gripped the strap of her heavy canvas tote bag with both hands. Brooks walked right beside her, keeping a highly irritating protective stance. He still had her phone tucked into the inside pocket of his expensive navy blue suit. "Give me my phone back," Kat demanded, checking her pink digital watch. It was almost 8:40. Spike was definitely eating her slippers right now. "I will return it when we are safe," Brooks replied calmly. He clicked a button on a sleek set of keys. Across the concrete floor, the headlights of a deep cherry-red SUV flashed. The vehicle was huge, shiny, and clearly ruinously priced. It had thick tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside. "Get in," Brooks ordered, opening the passenger door for her. Kat glared at him. She climbed up into the tall seat, tossing her canvas tote bag into the footwell. She made sure the plastic baggie of beef liver treats was still in her left jacket pocket. The smell of the treats was starting to mix with the rich leather scent of the car interior. Brooks shut her door and walked around to the driver's side. He climbed in, started the engine, and pulled out of the garage. The ride through town was tense and quiet. Kat stared out the passenger window, watching the streetlights pass by. She felt deeply exhausted. Her plan for the weekend was supposed to be a frozen pizza and sleeping for 12 hours. Now she was trapped in a fancy car with a man who claimed he grew fur on the weekends. This is what I get for working late, Kat thought bitterly. I should have ignored that hidden drawer. Brooks kept both hands firmly on the leather steering wheel. He checked his rearview mirror every 30 seconds. He was driving entirely too fast, taking sharp turns to avoid the main roads. Why is she so calm? Brooks wondered, glancing at her paint-splattered jeans. Most humans scream or faint when they learn the truth. She just wants to feed a dog. Turn left at the next light, Kat instructed, pointing toward her neighborhood. It is the brick building at the end of the cul-de-sac. Brooks followed her direction smoothly. They pulled onto her quiet street. The street lamps flickered dimly overhead. Kat lived in a modest, older building. It was not fancy, but it was cheap enough to help her pay off her hefty vet bills. Brooks parked the cherry-red SUV right by the front curb. He turned off the engine, but he did not unlock the doors. He sat perfectly still, turning his head toward the building. He inhaled deeply through his nose. "What are you doing?" Kat asked, feeling a sudden spike of anxiety. "Unlock the door." "Quiet," Brooks whispered harshly. He unbuckled his seatbelt. "Stay behind me." He pressed the unlock button and stepped out into the cool night air. Kat hurried out after him, grabbing her heavy canvas tote bag. She ignored his order to stay back and walked quickly up the concrete steps to her first-floor apartment. She reached into her bag for her house keys, but her hand stopped midair. Her apartment door was kicked wide open. The wood around the handle was totally splintered. The metal lock hung loosely by a single screw. The door swung slightly on its hinges, creaking in the wind. The damage was severe. It would not close properly again until someone replaced the entire frame. Kat dropped her keys. "Spike," she breathed, panic rising in her chest. She pushed past Brooks and ran straight into the broken doorway. Chapter 4. Kat rushed through the broken doorway. The inside of her apartment was completely trashed. Her coffee table was flipped onto its side. The sofa cushions were ripped open, spilling white foam stuffing all over the cheap carpet. Her bookshelf had been knocked over, scattering paperbacks across the floor. "Spike!" Kat yelled, dropping her heavy canvas tote bag near the entryway. She ignored the mess and ran toward the small kitchen. The food bowls were tipped over, dry kibble scattered everywhere. "Spike, where are you?" Brooks stepped through the broken door frame, being careful not to touch the splintered wood. He stood in the center of the living room, his dark eyes scanning the destruction. He did not look surprised. He looked angry. "Do not touch anything," Brooks warned her, stepping over a ruined sofa cushion. "They might still be close." Kat ignored him completely. She dropped to her knees, the cobalt blue paint splatters on her jeans pressing into the carpet. She checked under the kitchen table. Empty. She checked behind the overturned armchair. Empty. "Spike!" she called again, her voice shaking. She reached into her left jacket pocket and pulled out the plastic baggie of beef liver treats. She crinkled the plastic loudly. It was the universal sound for snacks. A tiny, pathetic snort came from beneath the flipped sofa. Kat scrambled over to the couch. She pressed her face to the floor and peeked underneath the dark gap. Two large, wet, bulging eyes stared back at her. "Oh, thank goodness," Kat sighed, feeling a huge wave of relief. Underneath the couch sat Spike. The small, slightly overweight Fug had his curly tail tucked tightly against his legs. His very wrinkly face looked deeply concerned. In his mouth, he held his faded red nylon leash. Wedged under his front paw was his squeaky toy shaped like a donut. "Come here, buddy," Kat coaxed, holding out a piece of dried liver. Spike wiggled his body forward, dragging the red leash and the donut toy with him. He crawled out from under the furniture and immediately began licking Kat's hand, eating the treat in one giant gulp. Kat scooped the heavy little dog into her arms, hugging him tight against her gray sweater. "You are okay," she whispered into his soft ears. Brooks watched them from the center of the room. He slowly turned his head, sniffing the air again. His nostrils flared. The sharp jawline of his face grew rigid. "I told you," Brooks said quietly, his voice carrying that low, rumbling warning. Kat stood up, holding her dog. She looked at her ruined apartment. "Who did this? Was this a robbery?" "They did not take your television or your computer," Brooks pointed out, gesturing to the electronics that were left perfectly intact on the floor. He walked over to the splintered door frame and examined the broken lock. This was not a robbery. This was a search. "A search for what?" Kat asked, genuinely confused. Brooks turned to face her. "For you." He pointed to a deep, jagged scratch mark on the drywall near the front door. It looked like 4 sharp knives had been dragged through the paint. "The rival pack was here. They tracked your scent from the lumber yard. They were looking for the human who discovered our ledger." Kat squeezed Spike a little tighter. The pug let out a soft snore. "Pack your things," Brooks ordered, his tone leaving zero room for argument. "Get whatever the dog needs. You are coming to my estate tonight, and you are not coming back here until this is entirely resolved." Chapter 5. Kat grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag from the floor by the entryway. She stepped over the splintered wood of her broken front door. It still swung sadly on its single remaining screw, creaking in the chilly draft. She had to pack, and she had to do it fast. Brooks Griffin stood near the overturned coffee table, his dark eyes scanning the ruined living room. Kat ignored him and marched into her kitchen. She opened the pantry. Miraculously, the dog food bin was untouched. She grabbed the giant plastic Ziploc bag and scooped enough dry kibble to last a week. She shoved the bag into her tote, right next to her silver laptop and her heavy-duty camping flashlight. Next, she grabbed Spike's favorite faded red nylon leash and a squeaky toy shaped like a donut. "Hurry!" Brooks ordered. He crossed his arms over his tailored navy blue suit. He was tapping his silver signet ring against his forearm. "We cannot stay here. If they circle back, I will have to fight them in a confined space." "I am moving as fast as I can," Kat snapped. She checked her bright pink digital watch. It was nearing 9 o'clock. She was running on fumes. She walked back into the living room to grab a spare jacket. Spike waddled behind her, his curly tail wagging happily. The small, slightly overweight fawn pug seemed to think this was all a very fun game. He walked right up to Brooks. Brooks looked down at the dog. The alpha scowled. Spike sniffed Brooks's left shoe. It was a shiny, ruinously expensive leather dress shoe. Then, without any warning, the pug lifted his back leg and released a long, steady stream of pee right onto the glossy black leather. Brooks froze. His jaw dropped. He stared at his ruined shoe in total disbelief. "I should probably apologize," Kat thought, biting the inside of her cheek. "But that is honestly the funniest thing I have seen all year." "Your animal just soiled me," Brooks stated. His voice was dangerously quiet. "He is marking his territory," Kat explained simply. "He gets nervous after break-ins. Come on, Spike." She clipped the faded red leash to the dog's collar. She hoisted her heavy canvas tote bag onto her shoulder and walked out through the broken door frame. Brooks let out a frustrated sigh, running a hand through his messy dark hair. He followed her out, his left shoe squeaking wetly with every step. They climbed back into his deep cherry-red SUV. Brooks drove fast, taking them out of the city limits and up a winding, tree-lined road. The tires crunched over a long gravel driveway until they reached a set of towering iron gates. The gates swung open automatically. Brooks parked in front of a giant stone mansion. It was intimidating and wildly overpriced. Kat pulled her gray sweater up on her shoulder. It kept slipping off, and grabbed Spike's leash. They walked up the wide stone steps to the front entrance. The heavy double doors were already open. Standing right in the center of the doorway was an older woman. She had silver hair pulled into a painfully tight, immaculate braided bun. She wore a sharp, tailored tweed blazer. In her right hand, she held a silver-tipped mahogany cane. She glared at them with piercing eyes. "Grandma," Brooks said, stopping at the bottom of the steps. "This is Katrina." Granny Rebecca lifted her mahogany cane and tapped it sharply on the stone floor twice. The sound echoed in the quiet night. She looked Kat up and down, her eyes lingering judgingly on the cobalt blue paint splatters on Kat's left knee. "Why is there a fragile, loud human on my front porch?" Granny Rebecca demanded. Her voice was harsh and raspy. "And why does she smell like cheap dog treats?" "This human girl has the survival instincts of a fruit fly," Granny Rebecca thought, gripping her cane tighter. "Bringing her here is a terrible mistake." Her apartment was tossed by the northern ridge pack, Brooks explained, walking up the steps. His shoe squeaked again. Granny Rebecca looked down at his foot with clear disgust. "I am responsible for her under the old laws. She is staying here." "No," Granny Rebecca scoffed, completely ignoring Kat. "She will panic. She will scream. She will demand room service." "Actually," Kat interrupted, checking her pink watch again, "I just want to go to sleep. Do you have a bed I can use, or should I just lay down on this porch?" Granny Rebecca blinked. She stared at the tired human. Then she slowly turned around and walked into the grand hallway. "Follow me," she commanded. Chapter 6. Granny Rebecca led Kat up a wide, sweeping staircase. The wooden steps creaked softly. Kat dragged her feet, her heavy canvas tote bag bumping against her hip. Spike waddled bravely up the stairs, his nails clicking on the polished wood. Brooks stayed downstairs to speak with his security team. They walked down a long, dimly lit corridor. Paintings of serious-looking people lined the walls. Finally, Granny Rebecca stopped at the very last door on the right. She pushed it open with the silver tip of her mahogany cane. "You will sleep here," Granny Rebecca announced. Kat walked inside. The room was spacious but incredibly cold. The furniture was old and dusty. A single small bed sat in the corner. The large window on the far wall rattled loudly. The wind was blowing straight through a large gap at the bottom of the window frame. It felt like standing inside a refrigerator. "This girl will be crying for a space heater in 10 minutes, Granny Rebecca thought with a smug sense of victory. Humans are so soft. Kat dropped her tote bag onto the floor. She unclipped Spike's red leash. She did not complain. She did not whine. Instead, she walked straight into the attached bathroom. She grabbed a thick, dry bath towel off the rack. She walked back to the rattling window, rolled the towel into a tight tube, and shoved it firmly into the gap at the bottom of the frame. The rattling stopped immediately. The freezing draft was cut off. Kat turned around and looked at the older woman. "Thank you for the room. Good night." Granny Rebecca stared at the rolled-up towel. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She tapped her cane twice on the floor, turned sharply, and left, pulling the heavy door shut behind her. Kat let out a long sigh. She reached into her tote bag, pulled out the Ziploc of kibble, and poured a pile onto a piece of paper towel for Spike. The pug ate happily. Kat did not even bother taking off her paint-splattered jeans or her oversized gray sweater. She just climbed into the small bed, pulled the thin quilt over her shoulders, and closed her eyes. She was asleep in seconds. 2 hours later, Brooks walked up the stairs. He had finally finished scrubbing his ruined leather shoe. Though it still smelled faintly of dog, he wore a fresh navy blue shirt, having ditched his suit jacket. He paced down the corridor, running a hand through his dark hair. He was stressed. The rival pack was getting bolder. He stopped outside Kat's door. He just wanted to check on her, make sure she had not tried to climb out of another window. He reached out and grabbed the brass doorknob. He turned it. It was locked. Kat had flipped the deadbolt from the inside. Brooks frowned. He twisted the knob a little harder, forgetting his own strength. He was an alpha. His muscles were dense and powerful. He twisted again, frustrated that a simple human lock was keeping him out. With a loud crack, the brass doorknob completely broke off from the wood. Brooks stumbled back a step. He looked down at his hand. He was holding the broken brass knob. The metal spindle inside the door was snapped in half. The locking mechanism was totally destroyed. Well, this is embarrassing, Brooks thought, staring at the useless piece of metal in his palm. I am a feared pack leader, and I just vandalized my own guest room. He stood quietly in the hallway, listening. From inside the room, he could hear the soft, rhythmic sound of Kat breathing, accompanied by the loud, rumbling snores of Spike. She had not even woken up. Brooks sighed quietly. He placed the broken doorknob on the floor next to the door frame. He could not fix it right now. The lock was shattered. He would have to deal with the grumpy accountant in the morning. He turned and walked away, leaving the door without a handle, knowing she would have to wait for him to open it for her in the morning. Chapter 7. Sunlight poured through the window, warming the dusty guest room. Kat woke up slowly. Her neck was stiff from sleeping in her oversized gray sweater. She sat up and stretched. Spike was currently chewing on his squeaky donut toy at the foot of the bed. Kat rubbed her eyes and walked over to the door to start her day. She reached for the brass doorknob. There was no doorknob. There was just a jagged hole in the wood. Kat blinked. She looked through the hole into the hallway. Standing on the other side, looking incredibly guilty, was Brooks. He was back in his tailored navy blue suit, his dark hair messy. He was holding a tray with a cup of coffee. "Good morning," Brooks said through the hole. "Where is the handle to my door?" Kat asked flatly. "It malfunctioned last night," Brooks lied smoothly. "The metal was old. It simply gave way." "You broke it," Kat stated. "You broke it because I locked you out, didn't you?" Brooks cleared his throat. He set the coffee tray on a nearby hall table. "I will have the maintenance team replace it by tomorrow." He reached his hand through the hole, grabbed the inner latch, and pulled the door open for her. Kat grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag and her bright pink watch. "No, you are going to fix it right now. I am not sleeping in a room without a lock while there are wild people attacking my apartment." She marched past him, her worn sneakers thudding on the floorboards. She headed straight down the sweeping wooden staircase and into the massive kitchen. She started opening drawers. Finally, she found a yellow plastic screwdriver and a spare, cheap silver door handle still in its packaging. She walked back upstairs. Brooks was still standing by the broken door. She shoved the screwdriver and the plastic package into his chest. "Fix it," Kat demanded. Brooks stared at the yellow screwdriver. "I am the alpha. I lead the pack. I negotiate treaties. I do not do basic carpentry." "I am negotiating peace treaties, not running a handyman service. Why am I fixing this?" Brooks thought, feeling his ego take a sharp hit. "You broke it, you fix it," Kat said, leaning against the wall. She crossed her arms. "I have all day." Brooks let out a heavy sigh. He took off his expensive suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He knelt down on the wooden floor and began unscrewing the ruined metal plate. He was terrible at it. He kept dropping the small screws. The yellow screwdriver kept slipping out of his large hands. "You are stripping the screw," Kat pointed out helpfully. "I know what I'm doing," Brooks growled, his face turning red. It is incredibly satisfying watching a powerful man get defeated by a simple Phillips head screw, Kat thought, hiding a smile behind her hand. They bickered back and forth for 20 minutes. Brooks complained about the cheap tools. Kat complained about his lack of coordination. But strangely, it felt normal. It did not feel like a terrifying werewolf boss and a kidnapped human. It just felt like two people arguing over a stubborn chore. Finally, Brooks managed to tighten the last screw on the new silver handle. He stood up, wiping a streak of dust from his forehead. "There, it is fixed. The door will lock." Before Kat could reply, heavy footsteps thundered up the staircase. A young man wearing a dark security uniform rushed down the hallway. It was Patrick, one of the pack guards. He was panting heavily, his eyes wide with panic. Alpha! Patrick yelled, stopping in front of Brooks. You need to come downstairs immediately. Brooks instantly shifted from a frustrated handyman back into a commanding leader, his posture straightened, his jaw locked tightly. What is it, Patrick? It is the Northern Ridge Pack, Patrick gasped, catching his breath. They are not just sending scouts anymore. Their alpha is here. He has surrounded the entire property line with 50 warriors. Brooks cursed under his breath. He grabbed his suit jacket from the floor. He looked at Kat, his dark eyes serious. Stay in this room. Lock this new handle. Do not come out. He turned and sprinted down the hallway, leaving Kat alone with a sudden sinking feeling in her stomach. Chapter 8. Kat did not stay in the room. She was pragmatic, not obedient. Hiding upstairs while an army surrounded the house sounded like a terrible plan. If things went wrong, she needed to know exactly where the exits were. She clipped Spike to his faded red leash, grabbed her canvas tote bag, and quietly walked downstairs. The grand hall on the first floor was packed. At least 60 people were gathered, murmuring nervously. Brooks stood at the front of the room, on a raised wooden platform. He was pacing back and forth, rubbing his silver signet ring with his thumb. Kat slipped into the back of the room and found a small wooden chair in the corner. She sat down, pulling Spike onto her lap. She reached into her left jacket pocket and pulled out the plastic baggie of beef liver treats. We will not show fear, Brooks began, his voice booming across the hall. He launched into another long, dramatic speech. He talked about territory lines, ancient honor, and the strength of their ancestors. Kat checked her pink digital watch. He had been talking for 4 minutes already. She sighed and pulled out a smelly piece of dried liver for her dog. Suddenly, Granny Rebecca sat down in the empty chair right next to Kat. The older woman placed her mahogany cane firmly between her knees. She wore a dark green tweed blazer today. She stared straight ahead, listening to her grandson. Kat was not paying attention. She was watching Brooks wave his hands around. Without looking, Kat reached into her pocket, pulled out another treat, and casually held it out toward the chair next to her, expecting Spike's mouth. Instead, her hand brushed against the sleeve of a tweed blazer. Kat turned her head. Granny Rebecca was staring down at Kat's hand. Sitting right in Kat's palm was a dark, smelly lump of dried beef liver. Did this tired girl just try to feed me dried animal organs? Granny Rebecca thought. The sheer audacity is almost impressive. Kat froze. Her heart skipped a beat, feeling like stepping on a Lego in the dark. She had just offered dog food to the terrifying pack matriarch. Moving with incredible speed, Kat closed her fist. She dropped the dog treat back into her left pocket. Then, without missing a beat, she reached into her heavy canvas tote bag and pulled out a small, round peppermint candy she had found at the bottom of her purse earlier. She held the mint out to Granny Rebecca. Mint? Kat whispered smoothly. Granny Rebecca slowly raised an eyebrow. She looked at the mint, then back at Kat. She did not say a word, but she reached out and took the candy, unwrapping it carefully. It was a tiny, silent victory. They think they can intimidate us, Brooks continued loudly, pacing to the left. They think they can cross into our valley and make demands. If this guy talks for 1 more minute, I am going to scream, Kat thought, resting her chin on her hand. Just then, the heavy front doors of the hall swung open. A guard named Jaden rushed in. He looked completely terrified. The entire hall went dead silent. Brooks stopped pacing. Speak, Brooks commanded. Jaden swallowed hard. Alpha, the rival leader is at the main gate. He refuses to leave. What does he want? Brooks asked, his jaw clenching tight. Jaden looked nervously toward the back of the room, his eyes landing directly on Kat. Everyone in the hall turned around to follow his gaze. Kat suddenly felt very small under the weight of 60 pairs of werewolf eyes. He does not want territory, Jaden explained, his voice shaking slightly. He says he tracked a scent to the lumber office and then directly to this estate. He demands that we hand over the human accountant. Brooks let out a terrifying low growl that shook the floorboards.
No one is taking her,
he declared. He stepped off the wooden platform, adjusting his tailored navy blue suit. I will go outside and speak to him myself. Chapter 9. Brooks strode purposefully down the center aisle of the grand hall. The crowd of pack members parted instantly, giving him plenty of space. He pushed open the heavy front doors and stepped out into the chilly night air. The doors swung shut behind him with a heavy thud, leaving the pack inside buzzing with nervous whispers. Kat did not want to miss a single second of this. She stood up from her small wooden chair, challenged Spike to her chest. The pug grunted, annoyed at being moved while he was digesting a beef liver treat. Kat quickly walked over to a large bay window near the entrance. She peeked through the glass, careful to stay partially hidden behind the thick velvet curtains. To her surprise, Granny Rebecca stepped right up beside her. The older woman leaned on her silver-tipped mahogany cane and squinted through the window pane. "Who is the man in the leather jacket?" Kat asked softly. "That is Trent," Granny Rebecca muttered. She tapped her fingers nervously against her cane. "He leads the Northern Ridge Pack. He is a greedy, bitter man who hates anyone with more land than him." If he hates people with land, he must really hate this giant estate, Kat thought, watching the scene unfold outside. Brooks walked down the wide stone steps. He stopped at the edge of the gravel driveway. Standing on the other side of the closed iron gates was Trent. Trent was shorter than Brooks, but he had a wide, aggressive build. Dozens of rival wolves stood behind him in the shadows of the trees. "Open the gate, Griffin," Trent shouted. His voice was raspy and loud. "You are trespassing," Brooks replied calmly. He adjusted his tailored navy blue suit jacket. He did not look scared at all. "Take your people and leave my valley. This is your only warning." Trent laughed loudly. It was an ugly, grating sound. "I am not leaving until you give me the human girl. We know she is in there. We tracked her trail straight to your door." Kat touched her messy brown bun self-consciously. She bought her shampoo on sale at the local pharmacy. There was no need to insult her personal hygiene over a territory dispute. Why is she touching her hair right now? Granny Rebecca thought, glancing sideways at Kat. Our entire security relies on my grandson, and she is worried about her split ends. "The accountant stays under my protection," Brooks stated firmly. He crossed his arms over his broad chest. "She knows nothing. She is not a threat to you." "She knows too much," Trent yelled, stepping closer to the iron bars. "Hand her over, or we will tear those gates down and take her ourselves." "Try it," Brooks dared him. His dark eyes flashed with danger. Kat held her breath. The tension outside was thick enough to slice with a butter knife. Brooks and Trent stared each other down through the metal bars. Neither man blinked. It was a classic standoff. Then, Trent made a sudden, sneaky movement. He reached into his leather jacket and pulled out a long, curved hunting knife. Even from the window, Kat could see the metal gleaming unnaturally bright under the moonlight. "Silver," Granny Rebecca gasped, her grip tightening on her mahogany cane. Before Brooks could react, Trent threw the blade right through the gaps in the iron gate. The knife spun through the air incredibly fast. Brooks twisted his body to dodge, but he was a second too slow. The silver blade caught Brooks right in the left shoulder. It sliced deeply through his expensive suit jacket and sank into his skin. Brooks let out a loud shout of pain, stumbling backward onto the gravel. A puff of smoke rose directly from the wound, accompanied by the horrible sizzling sound of burning meat. Trent smiled a nasty, cruel smile. "Think about my offer, Griffin," he called out. He turned and disappeared into the tree line, his pack members fading into the shadows right behind him. Brooks dropped to one knee on the driveway, gripping his bleeding shoulder. Kat did not hesitate. She dropped Spike onto the floorboards, grabbed the handle of the heavy front doors, and pulled them wide open. She rushed outside into the cold air, completely forgetting her own safety. "Brooks!" she yelled, running down the stone steps toward him. Chapter 10. Kat reached Brooks just as he managed to stand up. He was swaying slightly on his feet. His right hand was clamped tightly over his left shoulder. Dark blood was soaking rapidly through the fabric of his tailored navy blue suit. The smell of scorched fabric and burnt skin filled the chilly night air. "Do not touch the metal," Brooks warned her through gritted teeth. His dark hair fell into his eyes. "It burns." "He looks like he's going to pass out right on my shoes," Kat thought, grabbing his right arm to steady him. I cannot carry a man this heavy. Lean on me, Kat instructed. She wrapped her arm around his waist, ignoring the fact that his ruined, expensive suit was getting blood on her soft, oversized gray sweater. Together, they hobbled up the stone steps and back into the grand hall. The pack members instantly rushed forward, their voices loud and panicked. Granny Rebecca was already barking orders, tapping her mahogany cane twice on the floor to demand silence. "Get him to the side parlor," Granny Rebecca ordered. She pointed her cane at a guard. "George, bring the emergency medical kit from the upstairs bathroom immediately." Kat helped Brooks into a small, quiet parlor just off the main hall. She eased him down onto a stiff, floral-patterned sofa. Brooks groaned, leaning his head back against the cushions. His sharp jawline was tight with pain. George rushed into the room seconds later, carrying a large red plastic first aid box. He set it on the coffee table and quickly backed away, looking uneasy. Kat flipped the plastic latches open. The box was fully stocked with bandages, gauze, and a shiny pair of metal tweezers. "I need you to take the jacket off," Kat told Brooks. Brooks nodded tightly. Using only his right hand, he managed to shrug off the ruined navy blue jacket and drop it onto the floor. His light blue button-down shirt was completely soaked in blood around the collar. The silver knife had fallen out when he stood up outside, but tiny glowing shards of silver were still embedded deep in the cut. "Silver stops our healing entirely," Brooks explained, his breathing shallow. "It acts like a hot stove on our skin. You have to pull the pieces out before it will close." Kat picked up the metal tweezers. She leaned in close to him. She could see the tiny beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "This is going to hurt," she warned simply. "Just do it," Brooks said, closing his eyes. "I am letting a human with an accounting degree perform surgery on me," Brooks thought, gripping the armrest of the sofa. "This is a terrible security protocol." Kat worked quickly and carefully. She used the tweezers to pick out the tiny slivers of shining metal, dropping them onto a sterile gauze pad. Every time she pulled a piece out, Brooks's chest muscles twitched, but he did not make a sound. "You're actually very brave," Kat said softly, pulling out the final piece of silver. Brooks opened his dark eyes and looked at her. They were sitting incredibly close. He noticed a small smudge of blue paint on her cheek, likely transferred from the cobalt blue splatters on her jeans. For a moment, the pain in his shoulder faded into the background. He realized he liked having her nearby. It felt surprisingly calm. "You did not run," Brooks murmured, his voice low and raspy. "When Trent threw the knife, you ran toward me." Kat grabbed a clean roll of bandages and began wrapping it securely over his shoulder. "I ran toward you because you had the keys to the cherry red SUV," she lied smoothly, tying the bandage tight. "If you died in the driveway, I was going to steal your car and drive home." A genuine, warm smile tugged at the corner of Brooks's mouth. It changed his entire face, making him look less like a terrifying alpha and more like a normal, handsome guy. Kat felt her stomach do a weird, sudden flip. She quickly looked down at the medical box, suddenly feeling very flushed. Before either of them could say another word, a loud mechanical clunk echoed through the walls of the estate. Instantly, every single light in the mansion clicked off. The side parlor plunged into total, suffocating darkness. Chapter 11. The sudden darkness was thick and complete. Outside the parlor, the grand hall erupted into chaos. Pack members were shouting over each other, bumping into furniture and calling out for their alpha. Brooks tried to stand up from the floral sofa, but a sharp hiss escaped his lips as his newly bandaged shoulder pulled painfully. "Stay down," Kat ordered firmly in the pitch-black room. "You are injured. Just give me 1 second." Humans cannot see in the dark at all, Brooks thought, feeling a spike of panic for her safety. She is going to trip over the coffee table and hit her head. He reached out his right hand, trying to find her in the dark. His fingers brushed against the soft wool of her oversized gray sweater. He grabbed her sleeve lightly. "Katrina, do not move. There are matches in the kitchen." "I do not need matches," Kat replied. Brooks heard the familiar sound of a heavy zipper opening. Kat had carried her heavy canvas tote bag into the parlor with her. She rustled through the contents, pushing aside her laptop and the plastic baggie of beef liver treats. A moment later, A bright, powerful beam of white light clicked on, completely blinding Brooks for a second. Kat was holding a heavy-duty camping flashlight. She aimed the beam at the floor to avoid shining it directly into his eyes. Who carries an emergency flashlight in their daily work bag? Brooks asked, blinking away the bright spots in his vision. Someone who drives a very unreliable car, Kat answered practically. She walked over to him and held out her free hand. Can you walk? We need to find the power source before your people start a riot in the hallway. Brooks took her hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. He pushed himself up from the sofa. His left arm hung stiffly at his side, useless until the deep cut finished healing, but his legs were steady. The backup generator is in the utility basement. Follow me. Kat aimed the flashlight ahead of them. They stepped out into the grand hall. The beam of light swept across the panicked crowd. Granny Rebecca was standing perfectly still in the center of the room, using her mahogany cane to aggressively poke anyone who bumped into her. Everyone stay calm and remain in the hall, Brooks shouted over the noise. His alpha command voice was not vibrating with full power due to his injury, but it was still loud enough to make the pack instantly quiet down. Brooks gestured for Kat to follow him. They walked down a long, narrow corridor toward the back of the mansion. The air grew significantly colder as they approached a heavy iron door. Brooks used his good right hand to turn the metal wheel, pulling the door open. A flight of steep concrete stairs led down into the dark. Kat shined her flashlight down the steps. Watch your step, she murmured, walking closely beside him to ensure he did not lose his balance. They reached the concrete floor of the basement. The space smelled of coal dust and old motor oil. Kat swept the light across the room until the beam landed on a large green metal machine in the corner. That is the generator, Brooks said, stepping closer. Kat aimed the light directly at the machine. They both stopped in their tracks. The backup generator was completely destroyed. The metal casing was severely dented, bashed inward in several places. The thick electrical cables had been violently yanked out of the wall sockets. Resting on the floor, right next to the ruined machine, was a heavy steel sledgehammer. Brooks stared at the destroyed machine. His jaw clenched so tight, a muscle ticked in his cheek. He could not fix this with a yellow screwdriver. The engine block was cracked wide open. Trent did not just come here to talk, Brooks realized, his voice dangerously low. He brought a distraction to the front gate while someone else snuck into the basement to cut our power. Kat shined the flashlight around the dark basement, suddenly feeling very exposed. We are completely off the grid, she noted. No security cameras, no alarms. And no refrigeration, Brooks added grimly. Which means our entire food supply for 60 people is going to spoil by tomorrow afternoon. Chapter 12. By the next morning, the estate was entirely freezing. The power was still out, meaning the heating system was useless. The grand kitchen was a disaster area. The massive refrigerators had warmed up, and the pack cooks were frantically trying to salvage whatever they could. Kat walked into the kitchen wearing her soft gray sweater pulled tightly around herself. Her bright pink watch read 8 a.m. Spike trotted beside her, happily sniffing the floor for dropped scraps. Brooks was leaning against the counter, drinking a cup of cold, miserable coffee. He wore a clean, dark gray hoodie today, pulling the fabric carefully over his bandaged left shoulder. He looked exhausted. We are out of medical supplies and the fresh food is ruined, Brooks stated flatly as Kat walked up. I am sending a team into town to raid the local market. They will be recognized, Kat pointed out, pulling a water bottle from her heavy canvas tote bag. If Trent's people are watching the town, sending your guards is a terrible idea. I will go. Brooks nearly choked on his cold coffee. Certainly not. You are the target. I am a human who blends in perfectly, Kat argued calmly. I drive a faded plum-purple hatchback with a dented bumper. No one looks twice at me. If you send 4 muscular guys in black shirts, they will stick out entirely. Brooks rubbed the back of his neck with his good hand. He hated it, but her logic was flawless. Why does she always have to be right? He thought bitterly. It is incredibly annoying. Fine, Brooks finally agreed. But I am coming with you. I can hide my face. Before Kat could argue, the sharp tapping of a mahogany cane echoed on the tile floor. Granny Rebecca marched into the kitchen. She wore a thick wool shawl over her tweed blazer. She walked straight up to Kat and shoved a folded piece of paper into her hand. "If you are going to the store, make yourself useful," Granny Rebecca ordered harshly. Kat unfolded the paper. It was a very specific grocery list, written in elegant cursive. At the very top, underlined twice, was 1 tin of Earl Grey blue flower tea leaves, imported only. "I will see what I can find," Kat said simply, tucking the list into her jeans pocket. 10 minutes later, Kat was driving her plum-purple hatchback down the winding mountain road. Brooks sat awkwardly in the passenger seat. He had the hood of his gray sweatshirt pulled low over his messy dark hair, and he wore a pair of cheap sunglasses Kat found in her glove box. He looked ridiculous. They parked at a large, brightly lit human supermarket on the edge of town. They grabbed a metal shopping cart with a squeaky wheel and walked inside. Kat pulled out the supply list the cooks had given her. "We need 50 boxes of pasta and 20 jars of sauce," she read. Brooks walked stiffly beside the cart. He looked around the brightly lit aisles with wide eyes. He was an alpha. He usually had people handle simple errands for him. The sheer volume of bright packaging, loud music, and human shoppers was totally overwhelming his absurdly tuned senses. Kat turned her cart into the cereal aisle. The shelves stretched for 30 feet, packed with hundreds of brightly colored boxes. "Grab 10 boxes of oats," Kat told him, pointing to the shelf. Brooks stopped in the middle of the aisle. He stared at the wall of cardboard boxes. He slowly removed his cheap sunglasses. "Why are there 12 different versions of cornflakes?" he asked, genuinely distressed. "This is wildly unnecessary. Who needs frosted, honey-glazed, and almond-crusted flakes? It is just dried corn." He looks like a fierce warrior who just lost a battle to a cartoon leprechaun, Kat thought, biting her lip. She could not help it. A loud, sudden laugh escaped her mouth. It was a bright, clear sound that echoed in the quiet aisle. Brooks spun his head to look at her. He blinked in surprise. It was the very first time he had heard her genuinely laugh. Her eyes crinkled at the corners and the tired tension vanished from her shoulders. "Just grab the blue boxes." Kat giggled, wiping a tear from her eye. "It is not a trick question." Brooks stared at her smiling face. His heart did a strange, heavy thump against his ribs that had absolutely nothing to do with wolf instincts. He slowly reached out and grabbed a blue box of cereal, unable to look away from her. Chapter 13. Kat pushed the squeaky metal shopping cart out of the bright supermarket doors. The cart was overflowing with blue cereal boxes, jars of pasta sauce, and 1 precious tin of imported Earl Grey blue flower tea for Granny Rebecca. Brooks walked beside her. He kept his left arm tucked stiffly against his chest, hidden under the dark gray hoodie. The deep silver wound on his shoulder was healing slowly now that the shards were out, but it still throbbed with every step. He used his good right hand to adjust his cheap plastic sunglasses, scanning the paved lot. "This bright daylight is giving me a terrible headache," Brooks thought, squinting against the morning sun. "I look like a ridiculous tourist." Kat checked her bright pink digital watch. It was past 9. "We need to get this food back before the cooks start a riot," she said, steering the squeaky cart toward her faded plum-purple hatchback. "I still cannot believe you bought 12 boxes of the same dry corn," Brooks grumbled, though a small smile touched his lips. They reached the 2012 car with its dented rear bumper. Kat peered through the back window. Spike was sound asleep on the back seat, wrapped in his faded red nylon leash. She had flatly refused to leave the fawn pug alone in a freezing mansion full of stressed werewolves. Kat reached for the trunk handle. Suddenly, 3 tall men stepped out from behind a white delivery van parked 2 spaces away. They wore dark, heavy jackets and walked with a coordinated, predatory grace. Trent's pack members. Brooks reacted instantly. He shoved Kat hard behind him, putting his broad body between her and the strangers. He dropped his cheap sunglasses onto the asphalt. They cracked in half.
"Get in the car,"
Brooks ordered, his voice dropping into a dangerous, rumbling pitch. "Are you kidding me?" "We just finished grocery shopping," Kat thought, her heart hammering against her ribs like a runaway train. She fumbled for her keys. The 3 rival wolves did not bother talking. They charged. Brooks knew he was at a severe disadvantage. His left arm was completely useless in human form. If he tried to throw a one-handed punch, the torn muscle in his shoulder would just rip open again. He only had one option to protect Kat. He let out a deafening roar and shifted. The transformation was violent and immediate. His tailored dark gray hoodie ripped into shreds. The fabric tore apart like wet paper. His jeans burst at the seams, popping buttons and zippers as his bones expanded and reshaped. Within 2 seconds, the human boss was gone. In his place stood a terrifying, monstrous black wolf. The giant wolf snapped its jaws, entirely blocking the plum-purple hatchback. The silver signet ring had slipped off his human finger and clattered onto the pavement. The 3 rival men skidded to a halt. They looked at the giant, snarling beast. They realized they had made a terrible miscalculation. They were just scouts. They were not prepared to fight an alpha in his true form. Without a word, the 3 men turned and bolted toward the nearby woods, abandoning their ambush completely. Kat stood frozen, gripping the handle of the shopping cart. She stared at the giant wolf. It was breathing heavily, its dark eyes locked on the tree line. Okay. Seeing it happen in broad daylight is actually completely terrifying, Kat thought, her knuckles turning white on the cart handle. The black wolf turned its large head to look at her. It did not look angry anymore. It just looked protective. It sniffed the air once, ensuring the rivals were truly gone. Kat swallowed hard. "Are they coming back?" she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. The wolf shook its head once, a very human gesture. Then, it stepped behind the white delivery van, completely out of sight from the main road. Kat heard the sickening, cracking sound of bones shifting back into place. It sounded like thick tree branches snapping in half. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the noise. "Katrina!" A raspy human voice called out from behind the van. Kat opened her eyes. She walked slowly toward the front of her car. She grabbed the handle of the trunk and popped it open. Next to her spare tire sat an ugly, scratchy yellow plaid blanket she always kept for winter car trouble. She grabbed the yellow fabric. It was time to deal with the aftermath. Chapter 14. Kat marched over to the side of the white delivery van, holding the scratchy yellow plaid blanket in front of her eyes like a shield. She squeezed her eyes shut just to be extra safe. "Are you decent?" Kat asked loudly. "I just turned into a giant animal and shredded every piece of clothing I was wearing," Brooks replied, his voice dripping with exhaustion. "I am standing on cold asphalt with 0 garments. Take a wild guess." "I really hate pack politics," Brooks thought, shivering in the morning breeze. "My shoulder still hurts, and I am entirely exposed in a public parking area." Kat threw the yellow blanket blindly around the corner. "Wrap that around your waist. We need to leave before human police show up." She heard the rustle of the rough fabric. "You can look," Brooks said tightly. Kat lowered her hands. Brooks was standing by the van, clutching the ugly plaid blanket tightly around his waist. His broad chest was bare, revealing the dark, angry bruise and the slow-healing slice on his left shoulder from the silver blade. He looked ridiculous, but he was safe. "Wait," Brooks said, crouching awkwardly. He picked up his silver signet ring with the wolf crest from the pavement and slid it back onto his right index finger. "Now we can go." They rushed to load the groceries. Kat practically threw the blue cereal boxes and the imported tea into the trunk. She slammed the lid shut. They both jumped into the faded plum-purple hatchback. Spike woke up in the back seat. The small, slightly overweight fawn pug let out a confused snort, staring at the strange, half-naked man sitting in the passenger seat.
Go!
Brooks ordered, checking the side mirrors. Kat turned the key, jammed the gear shift into drive, and slammed her foot on the gas. The little car shot out of the parking lot, the dented rear bumper rattling loudly. She skipped the main highway, choosing a quiet dirt road that cut through the back of the mountain. The trees were thick here, hiding them from the main town. "That was too close," Kat said, gripping the steering wheel. Her oversized gray sweater had slipped off her shoulder again, but she ignored it. "They knew exactly where to find us. Trent must have people watching every store." "They are desperate," Brooks agreed. He adjusted the scratchy yellow blanket. "But they ran. They will not try a direct attack again today." "If this cheap car gets us back to the estate, I will personally buy her a new engine," Brooks thought, listening to the terrible grinding noise coming from the hood. Kat's hatchback was not built for speed or rough dirt roads. 5 miles into their escape, the car gave a violent shudder. A loud popping sound echoed from the engine block. Thick gray smoke immediately started pouring out from under the hood.
No, no, no,
Kat pleaded, tapping the dashboard.
Come on, please hold together.
The engine completely died. The car rolled to a slow, pathetic halt on the side of the dirt road, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere. Kat let her forehead drop onto the steering wheel. She let out a long, frustrated breath. Spike whined from the back, unhappy that the fun car ride had stopped so abruptly. Well, Kat muttered, staring at the smoke. This is exactly why I needed my accounting paycheck. The radiator is officially dead. Brooks looked out the window at the empty woods. His left shoulder throbbed. He was wrapped in a picnic blanket, stranded in a broken car with a human and a snoring pug. We cannot walk back, Brooks stated practically. It is 15 miles, and I am not wearing shoes. Do you have a communication device? Kat lifted her head. She glared at him. You confiscated my phone, remember? You put it in your navy blue suit jacket. The jacket you left on the floor of your parlor last night? Brooks blinked. He reached into his pocket. Except he had no pockets. He had a blanket. She is never going to let me forget this, Brooks realized, feeling a rare wave of embarrassment wash over him. Right, my apologies. He looked at his bare chest and sighed. My phone was in my jacket. It is gone. Kat reached into her heavy canvas tote bag and pulled out her silver laptop. I have a cellular data card for work, she muttered, typing fast. I am sending an email to a towing company now. Chapter 15. Kat sat sideways in the driver's seat with her feet resting on the dirt road. The driver's door was propped open to let in the breeze. The gray smoke had finally stopped pouring from the hood of the plum-purple hatchback. Kat closed her silver laptop and slid it back into her tote bag. They sent a confirmation email. It will be 20 minutes, Kat reported, checking her bright pink digital watch. Brooks sat in the passenger seat, his long legs cramped. He was still clutching the scratchy yellow plaid blanket around his waist. He leaned his head back against the headrest, looking out at the trees. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustling of the forest leaves and Spike aggressively chewing his squeaky donut toy in the back seat. I am sorry about your vehicle, Brooks said softly. He rubbed his sore left shoulder with his right hand. The skin around the knife wound was tight and angry, but the bleeding had fully stopped. Kat sighed, adjusting her soft gray sweater. She looked down at the cobalt blue paint splatters on her jeans. It is fine. It was going to break down eventually. I was just hoping it would wait until after I paid off Spike's vet bills. She worked so hard just to keep her animal healthy, Brooks thought, watching her profile. She doesn't care about power or territory at all. Is that why you were working so late auditing the lumber company? Brooks asked. Kat nodded. I just wanted a quiet, drama-free weekend, but apparently my boss is a secret wolf king with a lot of enemies. Brooks chuckled, a genuine, warm sound that surprised them both. I am not a king. I am just a guy trying to keep my people alive. And honestly, it is completely exhausting. Kat looked over at him. For the first time, she did not see a terrifying alpha. She just saw a very tired man wrapped in an ugly blanket. I get it, Kat said simply. Responsibility is heavy. It feels like you can never drop the ball, not even for a second. Finally, someone who actually understands the pressure, Brooks thought, feeling a strange sense of relief. My own pack just expects me to be flawless. Exactly, Brooks agreed. If I make a mistake, people get hurt. Like yesterday. I let my guard down for 1 second at the gate and Trent landed a silver blade in my arm. You were distracted, Kat pointed out gently. It happens. You cannot control everything, Brooks. It was the first time she had used his actual first name instead of Mr. Griffin. Brooks looked at her, his dark eyes softening. The tension in the small car suddenly shifted, replaced by a quiet, comfortable warmth. Before Brooks could say anything else, the crunch of heavy tires echoed down the dirt road. A large, rusty tow truck came around the bend. Bright yellow lights flashed on its roof. The truck slowed down and pulled over right in front of the dead hatchback. Right on time, Kat said, feeling relieved. She unbuckled her seatbelt and grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag from the floorboards. A tall man stepped out of the driver's side of the tow truck. He wore a dirty mechanic's uniform and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He grabbed a metal clipboard and walked toward them.
You folks call for a lift?
The driver asked. His voice was oddly flat and completely devoid of emotion. Brooks narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. His sharp senses flared to life. The wind shifted, blowing the man's scent directly into the car cabin. It wasn't the smell of a normal human mechanic. It smelled of wet earth and sour anger. Brooks looked closely at the man's neck as he approached. Just below the collar of the dirty uniform, a dark ink tattoo was visible. It was a jagged outline of a mountain ridge, the symbol of the Northern Pack. Brooks placed his good right hand flat on Kat's knee, stopping her from stepping out of the car. His muscles tightened.
Do not move.
Brooks whispered directly into Kat's ear.
That is not a human mechanic. It is a trap.
Chapter 16. Kat froze, her hand hovering right over the door handle. Her heart began to race. She looked out the windshield at the tall man with the clipboard. He looked completely normal, but she trusted Brooks's sharp senses. This is getting ridiculous, Kat thought, gripping her heavy canvas tote bag tighter. I cannot even get my car towed in peace. Brooks leaned closer to her. He spoke in a very fast, quiet whisper. I am going to step out and distract him at the front grill. I want you to grab your dog and the bag. The second he looks away, slip out the back passenger door and hide behind the truck. Kat gave a single, tight nod. She reached behind her seat and grabbed Spike's faded red nylon leash, clipping it silently to his collar. The sleepy fawn pug did not make a sound. Brooks pushed his car door open. He stepped out onto the dirt road, keeping the scratchy yellow plaid blanket secured tightly around his waist with his left arm. His injured shoulder ached, but he ignored the pain.
Having a bit of engine trouble,
Brooks called out cheerfully, walking toward the front bumper. He used his good right hand to wave at the fake mechanic. The driver paused, surprised by the sudden movement. He looked at Brooks, taking in the bare chest and the ridiculous picnic blanket. Radiator blew, Brooks continued, stepping right into the man's personal space. Nasty business. Can you hook it up from the front? While the driver was focused on the bizarre, half-naked man, Kat made her move. She pushed the back passenger door open quietly. She grabbed her tote bag, scooped Spike up under her right arm, and slid out of the vehicle. She ducked low, scurrying behind the huge tires of the rusty tow truck, completely out of sight. Please do not notice me, Kat prayed silently, crouching in the dirt and clutching her pug. Back at the front of the car, the fake mechanic realized the driver's seat was suddenly empty. His eyes darted toward the open back door.
Where's the girl?
The driver demanded, dropping the friendly act. He reached his hand into his dirty uniform pocket, clearly going for a weapon. She took a walk, Brooks said, his voice instantly dropping its cheerful tone. Before the driver could pull the weapon out, Brooks lunged. He swung his good right hand with terrifying speed and precision. His fist connected solidly with the man's jaw. The impact sounded like a cracking whip. The fake mechanic's eyes rolled back in his head. He crumpled instantly, falling face first onto the dirt road in a completely unconscious heap. Brooks shook out his bruised knuckles. He looked down at the unconscious wolf. Amateur, Brooks muttered. Is he dead? Kat asked, poking her head out from behind the rear tires of the tow truck. No, just sleeping, Brooks replied, grabbing the keys that had fallen from the man's pocket. He walked over to the tow truck's cab and opened the driver's side door.
Come on, we are upgrading our ride.
Kat hurried over, carrying Spike and her heavy tote. She climbed up into the tall, spacious cab of the big rig. The seats smelled faintly of old coffee and grease. She plopped Spike right in the middle seat. Brooks climbed into the driver's seat next to her. He had to adjust the yellow blanket carefully so he could reach the gas pedal. He inserted the keys and cranked the heavy engine. It roared to life with a loud, beautiful rumble. You are stealing a commercial vehicle, Kat pointed out, pulling her seatbelt over her oversized gray sweater. Technically, I am borrowing an enemy asset, Brooks corrected her, shifting the rig into drive. Besides, your car is dead. Did you want to walk? Fair point, Kat conceded, checking her bright pink digital watch. Drive fast. I still need to deliver Granny Rebecca's imported tea. Brooks smiled, steering the heavy truck down the dirt road. Leaving the smoking plum-purple hatchback behind, they drove off in their stolen ride, heading back toward the estate. Chapter 17. Kat steered the rusty commercial tow truck into the cracked asphalt lot of the Starlight Motor Lodge. The neon sign above the main office flickered violently, buzzing with a loud electrical hum. It was a cheap, forgotten roadside motel, the kind that offered hourly rates and asked 0 questions. She parked the heavy rig near the back of the building, keeping it entirely out of sight from the main highway. Brooks sat quietly in the passenger seat. He gripped the scratchy yellow plaid blanket tightly around his waist with his good right hand. His left arm remained pinned stiffly against his chest. The deep silver knife wound on his shoulder was healing slowly, but the surrounding skin was a dark, angry purple. He leaned his head against the cold glass of the window, looking deeply exhausted. "I will go get the room," Kat told him. She grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag from the floorboards. She clipped the faded red nylon leash to Spike's collar. "Do not give them your real name," Brooks warned, his voice raspy and low. "Use cash." Kat nodded. She walked across the freezing parking lot, her worn sneakers crunching on the loose gravel. She entered the dingy main office. A bored clerk sat behind a thick plastic security screen, watching a small television. Kat paid for one night using paper bills she kept stashed in her tote bag. She took the brass room key without saying more than 2 words. On her way back out, she stopped at a buzzing vending machine near the ice maker. She fed it a few coins and pressed the glowing button for black coffee. 2 flimsy paper cups dropped down, filling with hot, dark liquid. She walked back to the tow truck. "Room 7, she announced. She grabbed the 2 paper cups from the cup holders. They shuffled to the room together. Brooks moved very carefully, his right hand occupied with holding his blanket up, as Kat carried their coffee inside. He kept the yellow plaid blanket secure, taking short steps to avoid jarring his injured shoulder. Kat unlocked the thin wooden door and pushed it open. The room was incredibly depressing. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, revealing brown plaster underneath. A single sagging bed sat directly in the middle of the floor, covered in a thin floral bedspread. In the far corner of the room sat a terrible, hard plastic chair. Brooks stared at the single bed. He looked down at the awful plastic chair. "This is a cruel joke," Brooks thought, eyeing the cheap furniture. "My spine will permanently curve if I sit on that rigid thing for more than 10 minutes. Kat walked inside and dropped her tote bag onto the carpet. She unclipped Spike. The fawn pug immediately waddled over to the bed, jumped up with a surprisingly high leap, and curled into a tight ball directly on the only 2 pillows. Kat sat down on the edge of the mattress. She pulled off her shoes. She looked at Brooks. He was still standing awkwardly by the door, holding his paper cup of bad coffee and shivering slightly. "I am taking the bed," Kat stated clearly. Brooks blinked his dark eyes. "I am injured. I was stabbed with a silver blade to protect you. You also kidnapped me, dragged me out of my town, and got my apartment front door destroyed," Kat countered without missing a beat. She took a sip of the vending machine coffee. It was terrible and tasted like burnt cardboard. "Besides, you have a fast healing factor. I am a regular human. If I sleep in that plastic chair, I will need a chiropractor for a month. You can handle it." She has 0 respect for my authority, Brooks realized, taking a cautious sip of his own hot drink. "And oddly enough, I think I actually like it." "Fine," Brooks agreed slowly. He walked over to the corner of the room. He carefully lowered his large frame into the plastic chair. It creaked dangerously under his weight, bending backward. He adjusted the yellow plaid blanket, making sure his legs were fully covered. Kat pulled her soft, oversized gray sweater tighter around her shoulders. She laid back on the lumpy mattress. Spike snored loudly next to her ear. "Good night, Brooks," Kat said quietly, staring up at the dark water stains on the ceiling tiles. "Good night, Katrina," Brooks replied from his uncomfortable corner. The room fell completely silent, save for the loud hum of the cheap mini-fridge. Kat checked her bright pink digital watch in the dark. It was past midnight. They had survived the parking lot ambush. Now, they just had to figure out a plan to get back to the estate without getting caught by Trent's people.
She closed her eyes, letting pure exhaustion take over her body.
Chapter 18. Morning sunlight sliced through a gap in the cheap motel curtains, landing directly on Kat's face. She woke up slowly. Her neck felt stiff from the lumpy pillows, and her paint-splattered jeans were uncomfortable to sleep in. She sat up and stretched her arms over her head. Spike was currently sitting at the foot of the bed, aggressively chewing on his squeaky donut toy. Kat looked over at the corner of the room. Brooks was already awake. He was sitting in the terrible plastic chair, staring out the window. The yellow plaid blanket was still wrapped around his waist. He looked completely out of place in the dingy room, like a king forced to sit on a plastic milk crate. "How is the shoulder?" Kat asked, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Brooks carefully rolled his left shoulder. He winced slightly, but the movement was much smoother than yesterday. "The bruising is fading," he reported, looking at the dark purple skin. "The muscle is knitting back together. I should have full mobility by tomorrow." "That is good news," Kat said. She stood up, grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag, and pulled out her bright pink digital watch to check the time. It was 8 in the morning. She tossed Brooks the second cup of cold vending machine coffee from the night before. He caught it easily with his right hand. He took a sip and grimaced. "I cannot believe I am saying this," Brooks admitted, setting the cup on the small table next to him. "But I actually slept well. It is very quiet here." Kat raised an eyebrow. "You've slept in a hard plastic chair, wrapped in a picnic blanket. How is that peaceful?" Brooks leaned back. "Because no one is asking me for anything. At the estate, I have 60 people relying on me. I have to manage the lumber company finances, handle territory disputes, and ensure everyone is safe. If I make one wrong decision, my pack suffers." He carries a crushing pressure on his back every single day, Kat thought, feeling a sudden wave of sympathy for the man. No wonder he is always giving dramatic speeches. He is trying to convince himself everything is okay. "It must be nice to just be a guy in a motel for a few hours," Kat offered softly. "It is," Brooks agreed, giving her a genuine tired smile. "I do not have to be the alpha right now. I just have to sit here and drink terrible coffee with you." Kat felt a flush of heat rise in her cheeks. She quickly turned away, walking over to the old, bulky television sitting on a cheap wooden dresser. She pressed the power button, hoping to catch a local weather report to distract herself from the sudden, intense eye contact. The screen buzzed to life. The picture was fuzzy, displaying a local morning news broadcast. A human anchor in a bright red suit sat behind a desk, reading from a digital prompter. "We are tracking a breaking story out of the Northern Valley," the news anchor announced seriously. "Police are currently searching for a missing local woman." Kat froze. The television screen changed. A large, clear photograph of Kat's face flashed onto the screen. It was her driver's license picture. Her messy brown bun was visible, and she was wearing the exact same oversized gray sweater she currently had on. "Katrina Miller, a freelance accountant, has not been seen since Friday evening," the anchor continued. Authorities were called after her apartment was found completely vandalized. Police suspect foul play and are asking anyone with information to step forward immediately. Brooks stood up from the plastic chair. He forgot about his injured shoulder for a second, stepping quickly toward the television screen. "Turn it off," Brooks ordered, his voice suddenly sharp and fully alert. Kat reached out and pressed the power button. The screen faded to black, plunging the quiet motel room back into silence. Spike stopped squeaking his donut toy and looked up at them, confused by the sudden tension. "They put me on the news," Kat whispered, staring at her own reflection in the blank glass screen. "The human police think I was murdered." "This is a disaster," Brooks thought, his jaw clenching tight. Trent is not just using physical violence anymore. He is using human laws against us. Chapter 19. Kat began pacing the narrow strip of carpet between the sagging bed and the television. She rubbed her temples, trying to process the news broadcast. Her quiet, drama-free weekend was completely ruined. Now, she was a wanted missing person on local television. "This makes no sense," Kat said, stopping to look at Brooks. "Why would Trent's pack call the human police? Werewolves are supposed to stay hidden." Calling the cops brings a profound spotlight to the entire town. It is a calculated strategy, Brooks explained grimly. He paced the other side of the room, careful to keep his yellow plaid blanket secured. Trent knows we escaped the parking lot. He knows I am injured, but he does not know where we are hiding. So he leaked the story to the news, Kat realized, the pieces clicking together in her logical accountant brain. Exactly, Brooks nodded. He wants the police to find you. Every human cop in the county is currently looking for your face. If they find you, they will bring you into the public station, and Trent's people will be waiting right outside to grab you when you leave. This rival leader is playing a very dirty game, Kat thought, her hands balling into fists. He is using the local authorities as his own personal tracking dogs. We cannot go back to the estate, Brooks continued, rubbing his right hand through his messy dark hair. The roads will be covered with police checkpoints. If a cop pulls over this stolen tow truck and sees you inside with a half-naked man, they will arrest me for kidnapping. Kat looked down at her bright pink digital watch. She muttered her to-do list quietly under her breath. Feed dog. Fix car. Clear name with police. Avoid getting eaten. Suddenly she stopped pacing. She looked up at Brooks. Her brown eyes were bright with a new idea.
Trent wants the police to flush us out of hiding, Kat said slowly.
He is waiting for us to make a mistake and get caught.
Yes,
Brooks agreed, leaning against the ugly patterned wallpaper.
Then we ruin his plan by not hiding at all,
Kat declared. She looked at the nightstand where the heavy commercial tow truck keys sat. She grabbed them and dropped them into her jeans pocket. I am going to walk right through the front doors of the police station myself. Brooks stared at her. Are you out of your mind? I just told you Trent will have scouts watching the building. Let them watch, Kat countered confidently. They cannot attack me inside a building full of armed human police officers. It violates all your secret pack rules. I will walk in, tell the desk sergeant I am perfectly fine, and close the missing person case. Once the police call off the search, Trent loses his leverage. She is thinking like a brilliant strategist, not prey, Brooks realized, feeling a deep swell of admiration for the human girl. She is using logic to defeat brute force. It is too dangerous, Brooks argued, though his voice lacked its usual alpha command. It is the only logical move, Kat insisted. But we have a problem. You cannot walk into a public building wearing a scratchy yellow picnic blanket. Brooks looked down at his bare chest. I left my tailored suits at the estate. My clothes were shredded in the parking lot. Kat walked past him and opened the motel room door. She looked out at the rusty commercial tow truck parked in the lot. When I grabbed Spike from the truck cab earlier, I saw a duffel bag stuffed behind the driver's seat. The fake mechanic must have brought a change of clothes. 5 minutes later, Kat returned to the room carrying a dark gray zip-up mechanic's coverall. It was greasy and smelled like old metal, but it was intact. Brooks dropped the yellow blanket. He stepped into the coverall and zipped it halfway up his broad chest. He carefully left his bandaged left arm out of the sleeve, letting the fabric hang loosely at his side to avoid irritating the healing silver wound. It is not a navy blue suit, Kat noted, clipping the red leash to Spike's collar. But it covers you. Let's go talk to the police. Chapter 20. Kat parked the stolen commercial tow truck in the back of the crowded police precinct parking lot. She killed the heavy engine. Brooks didn't seem worried about the stolen vehicle. He had the local sheriff on his payroll after all. Kat grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag and tucked Spike under her right arm. The fawn pug was entirely unbothered by the new adventure. Brooks sat in the passenger seat, wearing the greasy gray mechanic's coverall. He looked incredibly uncomfortable in the cheap clothing. His injured left arm rested stiffly against his side.
I will wait by the entrance doors,
Brooks told her, checking his surroundings carefully. If any of Trent's people make a move, I will intervene. Just stay quiet and look like a normal human mechanic, Kat instructed, stepping down from the tall cab. They walked up the wide concrete steps of the police station together. The bright morning sun warmed Kat's face. She pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped into the bustling lobby.
Officers walked back and forth holding folders, while citizens sat on hard wooden benches waiting to file reports. Kat walked straight up to the high reception desk. A tired-looking human sergeant looked down at her over his reading glasses. "Can I help you, miss?" the sergeant asked, typing slowly on his computer keyboard. "Yes," Kat said politely. "My name is Katrina Miller. I saw on the local news that I am currently listed as a missing person. I am here to tell you I am not missing." The sergeant stopped typing. He looked at her face, then looked down at a printed flyer taped to his desk. He blinked in surprise. "You are Katrina Miller? The accountant from the vandalized apartment?" "That is me," Kat confirmed. She shifted Spike to her other hip. "My apartment was broken into, so I went to stay with my boss for a few days. I forgot to notify my landlord. I am perfectly safe." The sergeant frowned. "Your landlord did not report you missing, miss. An anonymous caller gave us the tip early this morning. They said you were taken by force." Kat let out an exasperated sigh. "It was probably a prank call. Look, I am standing right here. I have my dog. I just want the missing person alert canceled so I can go back to my life." The sergeant grabbed a pen and began filling out a thick blue form. "I need to see your identification, and I need you to sign an official statement confirming you are unharmed." "Gladly," Kat said, pulling her wallet from her heavy canvas tote bag. While Kat handled the paperwork, Brooks stood near the lobby entrance. He leaned against the painted brick wall, watching her interact with the officer. He was amazed by her calm logic. She did not panic. She simply navigated the human bureaucracy with the same pragmatic focus she used to audit his lumber company ledgers. "She is incredible," Brooks thought, a small smile touching his lips. She just dismantled a rival alpha's master plan by filling out a blue piece of paper. 10 minutes later, the sergeant stamped Kat's form. "All right, Miss Miller. The alert is officially canceled. The local news stations will be updated within the hour." "Thank you," Kat smiled genuinely. She turned around and walked back to Brooks. "Done. We are legally invisible again. Trent's plan just fell apart." Brooks nodded, pushing off the brick wall. "Good work. Let's get back to the truck." They pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped back out into the bright sunlight. Kat walked down the concrete steps, feeling a profound sense of relief. She reached into her pocket to grab the keys to the tow truck. She stopped dead in her tracks. Standing at the bottom of the concrete steps, blocking their path to the parking lot, was Trent. The rival alpha wore a thick leather jacket and a dark shirt. He looked completely human, blending in perfectly with the civilians walking past on the sidewalk. He had his hands shoved deep into his pockets. 2 of his large pack members stood silently right behind him. Trent looked up at them and smiled a nasty, cruel smile. "Hello, Katrina," Trent said, his raspy voice carrying easily up the steps. He completely ignored Brooke. Chapter 21. Kat stood on the bright concrete steps of the police precinct, clutching her heavy canvas tote bag. Spike was tucked securely under her right arm. The small, slightly overweight fawn pug let out a confused snort, staring down at the 3 men blocking their path to the parking lot. Trent smiled his cruel, nasty smile. The rival leader stood at the bottom of the stairs, wearing his thick leather jacket. He looked entirely too confident. 2 large pack members flanked him, their dark shirts stretched tight over thick muscles. Brooks reacted before Kat could even blink. He stepped sharply in front of her, planting his boots firmly on the concrete. He wore the greasy, dark gray zip-up mechanic's coverall. His injured left arm hung stiffly outside the sleeve, but his broad shoulders blocked Kat from Trent's view completely. "If he takes one single step closer to her, I will happily spend the next 20 years in a human prison for breaking his jaw," Brooks thought. His dark eyes locked on his enemy. "Step aside, Trent," Brooks ordered. His voice was a low, vibrating rumble that carried easily over the noise of the passing street traffic. "Or what?" Trent laughed, his raspy voice grating on Kat's ears. He gestured casually toward the glass doors of the precinct behind them. "Are you going to attack me here, Griffin? In broad daylight? Right in front of a dozen armed human officers?" Kat checked her bright pink digital watch. It was nearing 11 in the morning. The sidewalk was busy with civilians. Trent had played his hand perfectly. He knew Brooks could not risk exposing the existence of werewolves by starting a supernatural brawl in the middle of town. This guy really thinks a leather jacket makes him intimidating, Kat thought, shifting Spike's weight on her hip. He just looks like a bad extra in a motorcycle movie. I do not need to fight you in the street, Brooks replied calmly. He raised his right hand, the silver signet ring with the wolf crest catching the bright morning sunlight. You challenged my territory by attacking me at my own gate. You involved a human. You destroyed property. I am calling an end to this game. Trent's smile faltered slightly. He crossed his arms over his chest. What are you talking about? I issue a formal, ancient challenge, Brooks declared loudly. The words held a heavy, serious weight. Midnight tonight. The old stone circle behind my estate. Just you and me. The winner takes the Northern Ridge territory and commands both packs. The loser leaves the valley forever. Kat gasped softly. She knew Brooks was strong, but his left shoulder was deeply wounded from the silver blade. He could barely lift his arm, and now he was challenging a rival alpha to a winner-takes-all deathmatch. Trent looked at Brooks' stiff left arm resting against the greasy gray coverall. The rival leader calculated his odds. He saw an injured, exhausted opponent wearing stolen mechanic clothes. He saw an easy victory. I accept your challenge, Trent sneered, his eyes gleaming with greedy excitement. Midnight. Do not be late, Griffin. I would hate to claim your estate by default. Trent turned sharply on his heel. He walked away down the public sidewalk, his two large guards following closely behind him. They disappeared around the corner of a brick building, blending right back into the human crowd. Brooks let out a long, ragged breath. He dropped his right hand, the tension leaving his broad shoulders. Are you completely out of your mind? Kat asked, stepping out from behind him. She glared up at his messy dark hair. You have a hole in your shoulder. You cannot fight him tonight. I have no other choice, Brooks said simply, turning to look at her. He will never stop hunting you, Katrina. He will keep destroying apartments and pulling stunts with the human police until someone gets seriously hurt. A formal duel forces him to fight me directly. If I win, he has to honor the ancient laws and leave us alone. And if you lose? Kat asked, her voice dropping to a quiet whisper. Brooks reached out with his right hand. He gently touched the soft wool of her oversized gray sweater. I do not plan on losing. Now, hand me the tow truck keys. We need to get back to the estate. Kat reached into her jeans pocket and pulled out the heavy set of commercial keys they had taken from the fake mechanic. She handed them over without an argument. They walked the rest of the way down the concrete steps. Brooks unlocked the stolen, rusty commercial rig. Kat climbed up into the tall passenger cab, setting Spike on the middle seat. She buckled her seatbelt over her cobalt blue, paint-splattered jeans. She felt a knot of dread twisting in her stomach. Midnight was only 13 hours away. Chapter 22. The heavy commercial tow truck rattled loudly as it bounced up the long gravel driveway. The iron gates of the estate swung open, allowing Brooks to park the stolen vehicle right in front of the grand stone mansion. The property was still entirely without electricity. The backup generator was permanently destroyed by the sledgehammer, leaving the huge house freezing and quiet. Pack members rushed out the front doors the moment the truck engine cut off, surrounding the vehicle with anxious faces. Kat grabbed her heavy canvas tote bag from the floorboards. She clipped the faded red nylon leash to Spike's collar and hopped down from the cab. Brooks followed, moving his injured left arm very carefully as he stepped onto the driveway. Granny Rebecca stood at the top of the wide stone steps. She wore her sharp, tailored tweed blazer and held her silver-tipped mahogany cane firmly in her right hand. She watched them approach with piercing, critical eyes. Kat walked straight up the steps. She unzipped her tote bag, reaching past her silver laptop. She pulled out the small, shiny tin of imported Earl Grey blue flower tea leaves she had purchased at the supermarket. Here, Kat said, holding the tin out. I found the exact brand you requested. Granny Rebecca stared at the shiny tin. She slowly reached out and took it. She did not say thank you, but she gave Kat a single respectful nod. The human actually follows directions under pressure, Granny Rebecca thought, tapping her mahogany cane twice on the stone porch. Perhaps my grandson is not completely foolish for keeping her around. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of tense preparation. Since the kitchen refrigerators were warm, the pack cooks spent hours boiling the blue cereal boxes of pasta over outdoor camping stoves. Kat fed Spike a generous portion from her Ziploc of kibble, making sure the fawn pug was happy and comfortable in the drafty grand hall. By 11 o'clock that night, the estate was completely silent. Everyone knew what was coming. Kat walked up the sweeping wooden staircase and headed toward Brooks's private quarters. The hallway was lit only by the bright beam of her heavy-duty camping flashlight. She found Brooks standing in his room, staring out the window toward the dark woods. He had changed out of the greasy mechanic's coverall. He was now wearing loose, dark track pants and a simple black t-shirt. He had cut the entire left sleeve off the shirt with a pair of scissors, so the fabric would not rub against his healing silver wound. The dark purple bruising on his shoulder looked angry under the flashlight beam. Kat turned off the flashlight and set it on a wooden dresser. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. Brooks turned around. He looked tired, but his sharp jawline was set with grim determination. "I have fought in the stone circle before. I know the ground. I just need to keep him on my right side." Kat crossed her arms over her soft gray sweater. She took a deep breath. She was an accountant, not a warrior, but she knew how to manage a crisis. "Listen to me," Kat began, pacing a few steps across the rug. "This is just a bad corporate merger. Trent is a hostile takeover firm. He thinks your company is weak because your assets are temporarily frozen. He is going to come in aggressively, expecting you to fold under the pressure. I am literally coaching a werewolf for a death match using accounting principles," Kat thought, shaking her head at her own ridiculous life. "This is a complete circus." Brooks blinked in surprise, but he listened closely. "Do not play his game," Kat continued, pointing her finger at his chest. "You are the CEO. You control the board. Let him exhaust his resources trying to intimidate you, and then you strike when his profit margins drop. Do you understand?" Brooks stared at her. A genuine bright smile broke across his face. It was the most beautiful thing Kat had seen all day. He stepped closer to her, closing the distance between them. "I understand completely, Miss Miller." Brooks whispered. He reached out with his good right hand and cupped the side of her face. His thumb gently brushed across her cheek. Before Kat could overthink it, Brooks leaned down and kissed her. It was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. Kat's heart hammered a wild rhythm against her ribs. She grabbed the front of his cut black t-shirt, pulling him just a little closer. When he pulled back, Brooks looked at her with intense, dark eyes. "Stay inside the house. Do not come out to the circle." He turned and walked out the door, heading downstairs to face his rival. Kat stood alone in the dark room for exactly 3 seconds. Then she grabbed her camping flashlight. There was no way she was staying inside. Chapter 23. The old stone circle sat deep in the woods behind the estate. The clearing was surrounded by tall, ancient trees. The moonlight poured down, illuminating the flat dirt ground in the center. 60 members of Brooks's pack stood silently on one side of the clearing. On the opposite side stood Trent and his Northern Ridge followers. Kat stood at the very back of the crowd, hiding near a large oak tree. She kept her heavy-duty camping flashlight turned off, gripping it tightly in her hand. She wore her oversized gray sweater and her cobalt blue paint-splattered jeans. She refused to look away, no matter how scary this got. Brooks stood in the center of the dirt ring. He rolled his right shoulder to loosen the muscles. His left arm hung carefully by his side, the cut sleeve of his black t-shirt exposing the angry purple bruising. Trent stepped into the circle. He threw his thick leather jacket onto the dirt. He cracked his knuckles loudly. He did not look honorable. He looked like a street brawler looking for an easy payout. "We fight in human form," Brooks called out, his voice echoing in the quiet woods. "No weapons, no shifting. First man to concede or lose consciousness forfeits his territory." "Agreed," Trent laughed, stepping closer. Without any warning, Trent lunged forward. He aimed a brutal, swinging punch directly at Brooks' injured left shoulder. It was a dirty, cowardly opening move. "He thinks my injured shoulder makes me weak," Brooks thought, his dark eyes narrowing sharply. He is about to learn exactly why I run this valley. Brooks did not block the punch. Instead, he twisted his torso violently to the right, letting Trent's fist sail harmlessly past his chest. Using his opponent's forward momentum against him, Brooks swung his good right arm in a tight, vicious arc. His fist connected solidly with Trent's ribcage. A loud crack echoed across the clearing. Trent let out a sharp gasp of pain and stumbled backward, clutching his side. The rival leader's arrogant smile vanished instantly. He realized he had severely underestimated the injured alpha. Kat held her breath, her fingers digging into the bark of the oak tree. Spike was safely locked inside the freezing mansion, so she did not have to worry about the fawn pug running into the ring. She kept her eyes glued to the fight. Trent recovered quickly. He charged again, this time aiming low. He tackled Brooks around the waist, driving them both into the hard dirt. Dust kicked up into the air, obscuring Kat's vision for a terrifying second. Brooks grunted as his back hit the ground. Trent immediately pinned him down, raising a fist to strike, but Brooks was faster. He used his long legs to kick Trent hard in the chest, launching the rival alpha off of him. Brooks rolled to his feet instantly. He was breathing heavily, sweat shining on his forehead. Trent scrambled up, his face twisted in pure rage. He abandoned all strategy and rushed forward, throwing a wild flurry of punches. Brooks dodged the first two, but the third clipped his jaw. Brooks stumbled back a step, but he did not fall. Instead, Brooks stepped inside Trent's guard. He grabbed the front of Trent's dark shirt with his right hand, completely throwing the man off balance. With a powerful sweep of his leg, Brooks knocked Trent's feet out from under him. Trent crashed hard onto his back. Before he could move, Brooks dropped down, pressing his right forearm directly against Trent's throat. "Do you concede?" Brooks demanded, his voice a dangerous low rumble. Trent struggled, grabbing Brooks's arm, but he could not break the hold. He looked up into Brooks's dark eyes and saw zero hesitation. The fight was completely over. "I concede," Trent gasped out, slapping his hand against the dirt. Brooks immediately stood up and backed away. He did not gloat. He did not give a dramatic speech. He simply pointed his right hand toward the tree line. "Take your people and leave my land," Brooks ordered the northern pack. "If I see any of you in this town again, I will not be this generous." Trent slowly got to his feet, holding his broken ribs. He grabbed his leather jacket from the dirt and limped away into the woods. His entire pack followed him in total, defeated silence. The clearing erupted into cheers. Brooks's pack rushed forward to celebrate their alpha. Kat let out a long, shaky breath. She leaned her head back against the oak tree, looking down at her bright pink digital watch. It was 12:15. The hostile takeover had officially been canceled. Chapter 24. The grand stone mansion was still freezing the next morning. Without the smashed generator, there was no hot water and no central heating, but the mood inside the estate was completely different. The tension was gone. The rival pack had packed up their camp and fled the valley entirely. Kat walked into the side parlor wearing her soft gray sweater. She carried a small red plastic cooler by the handle. She set it down on the coffee table next to the floral-patterned sofa. Brooks was sitting on a sofa. He looked terrible. His jaw was swollen and bruised from Trent's lucky punch. He wore a fresh gray sweatpants and a loose white t-shirt. His left arm was resting on a pillow, the purple bruising looking even darker in the morning light. "You look like you lost a fight with a freight train," Kat noted, opening the lid of the red cooler. "I won the fight," Brooks argued, wincing as he spoke. "My territory is safe." "You still need ice," Kat replied. She reached into the cooler. Since the industrial refrigerators were useless, George had driven the stolen tow truck to a nearby gas station and bought 3 bags of ice. Kat pulled out a frozen plastic baggie and wrapped it in a clean white hand towel. She sat down next to him on the sofa and gently pressed the cold towel against his swollen jaw. Brooks let out a quiet sigh of relief, leaning into her touch. He reached up with his right hand and held the ice pack in place, his fingers brushing against hers. "Thank you," Brooks said softly. He looked at her closely. "You did not stay inside the house last night. I saw you hiding by the oak tree." "I am the lead accountant on this merger," Kat joked, dropping her hand to her lap. "I had to make sure the CEO did not ruin the deal." Before Brooks could respond, the heavy wooden doors of the parlor opened. Granny Rebecca walked into the room. She moved slowly, leaning on her silver-tipped mahogany cane. She wore a dark red tweed blazer. Granny Rebecca stopped in front of the coffee table. She looked at Brooke's bruised face, then she looked at Kat sitting right next to him. The human stayed, Granny Rebecca thought, adjusting her grip on the mahogany cane. She did not run away from the violence. She did not panic. Perhaps she is not entirely useless after all. Without saying a single word, Granny Rebecca reached into her blazer pocket. She pulled out a small, round object wrapped in crinkly, clear plastic. She dropped it directly into Kat's open palm. Kat looked down. It was a strong peppermint candy. "Thank you, Rebecca," Kat said politely, slipping the mint into her jeans pocket next to the baggie of beef liver treats. The older woman tapped her cane twice on the floorboards, turned around, and walked out of the room, leaving the door open behind her. "That is a profound compliment," Brooks chuckled, then immediately groaned as his jaw protested the movement. She usually throws those mints at people she hates. Kat smiled, looking down at her worn sneakers. The room fell into a comfortable, quiet silence. For the first time since she found the hidden ledger in his office, Kat actually felt completely relaxed. "I like you," Kat admitted suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. She looked up and met his dark eyes. "You're bossy, and your family is terrifying, and you have entirely too much drama in your life. But I really like you." Brooks lowered the ice pack from his face, his dark eyes softened, shining with genuine emotion. "I like you too, Katrina. You are the only person in this entire valley who refuses to listen to my orders. It is incredibly refreshing." He reached out and took her hand, lacing his large fingers through hers. "Stay here," Brooks asked, his voice low and serious. "The immediate danger is gone, but I do not want you to go back to your empty apartment. Move into the estate permanently. Bring your dog. Keep auditing my ledgers. Just stay with me." Kat looked around the cold, drafty parlor. She thought about her ruined apartment and her dead plum-purple hatchback. Then she looked back at the handsome, stubborn alpha holding her hand. Chapter 25. 2 weeks later, the estate was finally back to normal. A human repair crew had come out and installed a brand new backup generator, so the mansion was warm and brightly lit. Kat sat at the large kitchen island. She was wearing her favorite oversized gray sweater and her cobalt blue paint-splattered jeans. Her heavy canvas tote bag was resting on the floor next to her stool. She had her silver laptop open on the marble counter, typing numbers into a spreadsheet. Spike was sleeping comfortably on a plush dog bed in the corner of the vast kitchen. He had a brand new squeaky toy shaped like a hot dog, courtesy of Granny Rebecca, who secretly spoiled the fawn pug when she thought nobody was looking. Brooks walked into the kitchen. His bruises were completely gone. The silver wound on his left shoulder had finally healed into a neat white scar, and he had full mobility back in his arm. He wore a sharp, tailored navy blue suit, looking every inch the powerful CEO and pack leader. He walked up behind Kat and placed a kiss on the top of her messy brown bun. "Good morning," Brooks said smoothly, pouring himself a cup of hot coffee from the newly repaired machine. "Morning," Kat replied, not looking up from her bright laptop screen. "I just finished the monthly lumber audit. Your profit margins are up 4%. Brooks leaned against the marble counter, holding his coffee mug. He tapped his silver signet ring against the ceramic cup. He took a deep breath and his posture shifted. He squared his broad shoulders and stood up completely straight. Kat recognized that stance immediately. He was getting ready to give a speech. "Katrina," Brooks began, his voice dropping into that deep, dramatic tone he loved to use. "Now that the northern pack is gone, we must remain vigilant. Peace is a fragile construct. As the alpha, it is my sole responsibility to ensure that our security protocols are updated and strictly enforced. We cannot allow ourselves to become complacent in times of victory." He is doing the hand-waving thing again, Kat thought, watching his right hand gesture passionately through the air. It is time to shut this down before he starts talking about ancient bloodlines. Kat checked her bright pink digital watch. He had been talking for 45 seconds. That was long enough. She reached into her left jacket pocket without looking away from her laptop screen. Her fingers found the familiar plastic baggie, She pulled out a single, hard piece of dried beef liver treat.
The perimeter must be checked twice daily, Brooks continued loudly, pacing 2 steps to the left. I plan to personally oversee the new training schedule for the guards.
Because our survival depends on... Kat flicked her wrist perfectly. The piece of beef liver flew through the air and hit Brooks squarely in the center of his forehead with a soft thwack. The treat bounced off his skin and landed on the marble counter. Brooks stopped talking instantly. He blinked, completely stunned. He looked down at the dog treat resting next to his coffee mug, then looked up at Kat. You promised no long speeches before 10 in the morning, Kat reminded him simply. She hit the save button on his silver laptop and closed the lid. Brooks stared at her for a long moment. Then, his intense expression broke. He threw his head back and laughed loudly, a bright, joyous sound that echoed through the warm kitchen. He walked around the island, pulled her off the stool, and wrapped his arms around her waist.
You are completely impossible to manage.
Brooks smiled, kissing her deeply. I am an accountant. Kat mumbled against his lips, wrapping her arms around his neck. I manage you. Spike snorted loudly from his bed, completely unfazed by the romance happening in the kitchen. Kat leaned against her alpha, finally getting the quiet, drama-free morning she had wanted all along. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere just yet. If you thought Kat was brave for shutting down a dramatic alpha king with a piece of dried beef liver, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. You have to hear this disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is entirely wild. See you there.